here in cyberspace. We have another interesting interview, I think. Joe Anderson is here from Combined Technology Solutions. Joe, welcome to Short Talk. We're happy to have you. Joe is involved in a really exciting project, I think, called the X PRIZE, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And what is the X PRIZE?
The X PRIZE Foundation, 2 years ago, set a goal of setting up a competition to send a aircraft into low space orbit, come back to Earth, and go back up in 10 days. And Burt Rutan won that. That was a $10 million prize. And that was kind of to showcase technology outside of NASA. That didn't cost $1 billion to do this. So last year, they came up with this idea to pose the challenge to build a car that will get 100 miles per gallon. The rules for this is that the car has to seat 4 people, it has to get 100 miles per gallon, it has to meet Tier 2 emissions regulations, it has to have a 200-mile range, and it has to be something that the people want to buy, that they want to drive. It's not something you can lay down in and pedal or any of that type of stuff. So our background is on internal combustion engineering. Back in 1992, we made a discovery with plasma ignition that helped increase the efficiency of the internal combustion engine remarkably. So the X PRIZE Foundation, you can put up the first picture. The X PRIZE Foundation, who we made application to enter this competition.
You know, you're better looking than the logo for that thing.
Thank you.
It's sort of odd, isn't it?
It is an odd, but the X PRIZE Foundation got Progressive Automotive Insurance to sponsor this whole competition. The mainstream class, which is what the meat of the competition's about, gets a $5 million prize for the guy with the best car that gets 100 miles per gallon or more. I mean, it could be more. I mean, you heard the Chevy Bolt claim 231 miles per gallon. The problem is it can only go 40 miles on that.
Sure.
Then it's 42 miles per gallon for the next, 160 miles, sure. Which, when you average it out, is doesn't meet the criteria. Go ahead and bring the next picture up. What we chose to do was to take our combination of technologies and wrap it into a car that everybody would like, and hence we came up with the Cadillac CTS. It's a nice looking car. It's kind of very shapely and has some aerodynamics. It meets
American.
It's American, absolutely, absolutely. Our first car was kind of the CLS Mercedes, but we said that's a foreign car. We had to stick with USA. So Cadillac was our choice, one of our first choices. What we do is that we're going to take the Cadillac and make it lighter. It's a 3,700-pound car, so we're going to strip it down to 2,700 pounds. That's what our goal is. I'm not sure we can make that, but we're going to add electric drives to recapture the energy of braking. Then we're going to use our internal combustion engine specialties in making the engine so efficient that it will get the additional mileage. My background, you can bring up the next picture. My background is 20 years of professional drag racing in NHRA. Pro stock was my specialty, which is kind of unlimited on what you can do to the engine as long as you're using 2 carburetors, gasoline, 5 speeds forward, and 499 cubic inches, 500 cubic inches.
So reasonably minor rules.
Reasonably minor rules. So you can do very creative stuff with cylinder heads. We would weld an inch on the cylinder heads and angle mill them and tilt the air up in the air, the carburetor straight up in the air so you had a better shot with the fuel. In 1992, I joined a professor at MIT that created a plasma energy source. We were able to reduce emissions at the tailpipe of industrial engines by 95%. Take the NOx right down. We decided to use it inside of the engine just to find out what could it do. And as a racer, I'm always looking for more horsepower, more fuel economy, and emissions became a critical item. Carol Brownert was head of the EPA, and she was on the industry's tail to reduce emissions. What we found was that when we used it as an ignition source, the engine was much crisper. You could hear it right off the bat. Even the most novice person would say, that sounds better. Then when we went and used it in race cars, it actually made more power. The car was faster going around the track. On the dyno, it made more power. We incidentally tested it on ethanol, methanol, gasoline, propane, natural gas, nitromethane even. I mean, while you have it, let's go ahead and try it.
Sure.
And lo and behold, we found out that we needed no fuel enrichment to start the engine. We actually had a Mercury Marine outboard engine in Fond du Lac that we froze to minus 40 degrees, and it started on the first pull of the rope with no choke, no fuel enrichment, and went to wide open throttle the next instant.
Sounds pretty remarkable. Well, you had a whole lot of success with industrial engines too, right?
Yes.
Before that.
Bring up the next slide. Please. This is a detonation chart. You can't see it very well, John, but there's a...
you can't see anything very
Yeah,
well.
exactly. It's pretty far away. There's a line that goes up that shows us the NOx curve, which is the orange line that's going
Nitrous
up.
oxide.
Nitrous oxides. Acid rain. And that's created from emissions from all types of internal combustion sources, any combustion source actually. The dotted line that's going up is the efficiency line for the engine. The bottom graph going left to right is air-fuel ratio, going from rich to lean to the right side. You can see from this chart that there's a danger area when you start to get onto the lean area, which is where that little sunspot is, and that's a detonation area. If you go further to the right of that, every other ignition system in the automotive world creates a misfire. So you can't run lean, so you have to run on the rich side, or just a tad bit lean. With the plasma ignition, we were able to run radically lean air-fuel mixtures, and that just gave us a market in the industrial engine segment, because they needed to bring the nitrous oxides down, which is created temperature over time, but they have to keep the same horsepower, and if they can, the same fuel curve. Well, we found out we could actually lower the fuel curve too, while lowering the emissions. And we do this through putting more air into the engine. So you have, instead of 17 to 1 air-fuel ratio, which is stoichiometric air-fuel ratio for natural gas, a lean engine might go out to 19 or 21 to 1 air-fuel ratio. We were able to go out to 70 to 1 air-fuel ratio on the 2-cycle engines, and over 30 on the 4-cycle engines. So we never found a real lean limit. Southwest Research did research on this, and their comments were, we don't know where the lean limit is, and the engine sounds so much better. So we decided to take this and use this on the automotive side for this X Prize competition.
And when does that start, actually?
It actually starts, well, it's actually started, but we had to do a business plan summation that we have to prove how we can build 10,000 cars a year. I thought it was going to be simple, but you know, it took a month almost to come up with the plan, and that's if everything works. So the competition, the actual competition, starts May of next year, and we're going to start in Detroit, and we have several tests that we have to do out there: dyno testing, emissions testing, rolling resistance testing, all kinds of things. Safety testing. If you're building your own car, you have to prove that's crash-worthy without crashing it. So you need a lot of engineering data on that. Then it moves on to Akron, Ohio. I'm not quite sure why we're going to Akron, but Firestone, one of our sponsors, Firestone Bridgestone, they're in Akron, so this is pretty good. So our next stop, our final stop, will be Washington, D.C.
Could you choose the cities, or does everybody go to the same place?
Everybody goes to the same place.
Okay, runs the same course?
Yes. And the X Prize, in the beginning, was going to use 12 city tour stops. So you could say in San Diego, in San Francisco, we were going to do the downhill rolling test. And in Los Angeles, we were going to do the smog elimination test, or, and then high altitude in Denver. And they decided not to do that. Now that took a little bit of the wind out of our sails, because as a racer, we lived off of sponsorship money.
Sure. And
sponsorship money is directly proportional to how many people will see what you're doing. Sure. Impressions of media value. So we are actually adding 10 cities to the tour. So